An article over the weekend in the Washington Post revealed that the Pentagon is creating an intelligence agency of its own that could rival the CIA in both size and scope. The Defense Intelligence Agency is aiming to have as many as 1,600 collectors, they're called, in positions around the world. And according to the agency's director, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, this is a major adjustment for national security. Well, it also raises some major questions about the size of our intelligence force in this country, considering there are 16 agencies that deal with intelligence matters. To talk more about this, I am joined by Tony Schaefer, Director for External Communications at the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. Hey there, Tony. What do you make of this? I mean, why not just use one of the agencies already in place?
Well, the honest answer is, and if anybody reads my book, we talk about this. Defense Intelligence Agency has had a capability since 1995, essentially. One could go back and ironically find an interview done by Ms. Starr when she was with CNN with General Clapper, who was then director of DIA back in 1995. It talked about the very same set of issues, believe it or not. And the whole thing is that this is more of an expansion of existing capabilities than something new. Defense Intelligence Agency in the 1995 reorganization absorbed something called GDIP HUMIT. That's General Intelligence Fund HUMIT, which basically was a consolidation. So while this is not new, the idea of going to 1,600 collectors is significant and does indicate that there is a serious effort to expand. Let me comment on that. I think it's insane that they're saying anything publicly about this. This is truly something that should only be talked about at classified level. So the fact that this hit the New York Times is bad.
Yeah, the Washington Post. I mean, one of the criticisms, though, and perhaps someone on the inside felt the same, but it's that this program, that because the DIA falls under the military umbrella, there are different, congressional notification requirements than the CIA. So much of what could be done without oversight. I mean, what do you think about these criticisms?
That's valid. And let me be very clear. As most of your audience knows, I testified to something called Able Danger, which was a pre-9/11 effort to go after al-Qaeda. Most of your audience may understand I testified in front of the House Armed Services Committee, not the intelligence committees, because the operation was focused on military operations, which is Title 10. Title 10 are those capabilities, those laws, which govern military operations. And that is separate and distinct from intelligence collection. Intelligence collection has to do with something called Title 50, which is essentially those body of laws which allow for CIA to conduct its covert operations as well as intelligence collection operations. Theoretically, anything done to collect intelligence should be done under Title 50 and under specific congressional oversight. With that said, there is still oversight of Title 10, but it's done by different committees. One of the things we're finding, for example, about Benghazi is that there's a lot of different issues, but no one committee you can go to because you have the foreign affairs, you have the intelligence, you have armed services. And that's part of the problem here is that there may be a perception that there may be an attempt to bypass certain oversight by going and building this within Department of Defense versus within CIA.
Yeah, certainly when we saw General Petraeus here on the Hill a couple weeks ago, those hearings were closed doors, but it was he was testifying before several different committees. So it does seem like, there are some different channels here. Let me ask you about another criticism, though, by a whole lot of people on Capitol Hill. That is that this new arrangement, and like you said, the DIA is not new, but it is a vast expansion. But that this new arrangement is, too generous to the CIA. I mean, the CIA, according to this article at least, will get to sort of approve or deny these missions, and will get to use DIA members as support.
Huge point of friction. I fought this myself inside. Yes, this has been something that goes back well before 95. Basically, the director of CIA is also called the Director of Central Intelligence, the DCI. And I was just meeting with Jim Woolsey the other night, former Director of Central Intelligence, and Jim worked under President Clinton as Director of Central Intelligence / Director of CIA. It's a dual hat sort of thing. And because there is a need to deconflict, generally speaking, every operation must be coordinated within the Director of Central Intelligence. That is basically a common sense thing to do. With that said, there's inherently friction between CIA and DIA. And as the article stipulates, and I can, we talk about this a bit in my book, Operation Dark Heart, everybody, to include DOD case officers, are trained by CIA. With that said, the similarity ends there. The DOD missions are completely different. often CIA will take things from DIA if they like it. One of the notable things about Able Danger, which was the pre-9/11 effort, is that CIA did things to undermine the Special Operations Command efforts to go after bin Laden. That was something that I testified to. So with that said, there's always friction, and I don't see it getting any better with the current set of laws or with this expansion, because obviously there's still going to be issues of who's in charge.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. This friction between the DIA and the CIA. As we know,
Right.
for years there's been friction between the CIA and the FBI on matters.
Right.
So I mean, you think that this is just going to sort of make matters worse by having yet another agency sort of not quite, but sort of competing with the CIA?
Well, competition is a tough term. DoD has its own missions, and those do often get in conflict with CIA. CIA sees itself, and I'll be very kind to my friends. We call them the Klingons because they are in Star Trek lore. They're kind of like the Klingons. Are part of the Federation, but they do their own thing, much like So they often do their own thing, and they aren't necessarily in sync with DoD. So we take great exception. And again, for your audience to understand, my book Operation Darkheart was going to be done without CIA's knowledge. We were just going to do it and do it under DoD's authority. So again, this is not the first time, won't be the last time that there's conflict. And frankly, as a DoD case officer, we have done a number of things to work around them. And again, partnering with the FBI has been one of those options as well.
Well, it's interesting, too, when we talk about these two factions. I mean, this has already been approved, though, by Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta, as well as former CIA Director David Petraeus. Let's not forget, Leon Panetta used to be the director of the CIA.
Right.
I mean, do you think that this fostered sort of a greater desire to carry over his old tricks, so to speak, to his new position?
I don't know. I think there's been talk from again from '95 of actually consolidating everything into a single service, especially calling it the National Clandestine Service. For obvious reasons, because of the duality of law, because of Title 10 versus Title 50. DoD's never signed up to that. DoD always feels there's things that DoD must do on its own. Let's remember also, NSA, National Security Agency, is a DoD organization. We also work very closely with NSA, as does CIA, but again, it's different. And often there's been conflict, as I mentioned before, where we DoD have worked with the other folks relating to CIA, FBI folks relating to the issues that are essentially Title 10 like. And so there's always going to be conflict until people can actually work out the differences and find a way to actually cooperate. Cooperation is never an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I think you make some good points, though. Certainly surprising that this has been made public. I think a lot of those criticisms that it's yet another organization of intelligence officers out there, kind of valid. But since it is out there, we figured we'd talk about it. Tony Schaefer, Director for External Communications at the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.